All right, guys, we got a special episode of Almost Agreement. We got a super sick Matt who's apparently excited about his mug. He wants to make sure everybody sees it. And I got Randy Pace sitting in, and I want to figure out if I am even remotely, if I even understand what the parties are, that kind of thing. You guys hear me complain about it all the time. I don't understand how the parties work, where I sit in the parties, how this benefits me as a voter and you at large. Because there's been a number of polls recently that show that more and more Americans are at least classifying themselves as independent voters. And so what kind of those kind of things mean. So anyway, we're Almost in Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. I got to do some updates now that the primaries passed on the Voter Guide 22, but it does have a list of everybody, what seat they're running for, links for their website or the show if I've done a show with them. Go to your favorite podcast provider and pick us up there. Like, share, subscribe, retweet, all those things. Tell your friends about us. And then don't forget to check out the show that I'm producing for the Compass guys. It's Compass Points. Also available on all your different podcast providers and YouTube and those things. So check them out as well. They're a much smarter version of what I am. And they're actually like journalists where I'm just a guy trying to figure shit out. So anyway, here we go. So Randy is in the room with me. Randy, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to be back.
I'm glad to have you here. It's been a minute. I mean, I will say, and I promised Matt that I would do this, that I'm kind of pissed at Daniel because he's really hard to get pinned down for anything. But I can't make people come in here yet. That's one of my agenda items. I want to get big and important enough that I say you're coming on my show, and they say I guess I have to.
Yeah, I guess if Fox News called somebody or CNN called somebody,
don't be insulting.
And they paid him.
You're in my house.
They paid him for a put him up in a hotel room and all that. You do have kind of a green room, so.
The green room's the backyard with the kids.
You got a green shirt on.
Yeah, I apparently all I own are green shirts, which gets really funky when I'm messing with the system in here because I'll be testing green screen with the green shirt on and I'll just be a floating head. So Matt is at home, everybody. He's not been feeling well, but we're glad to have you here, Matt. How you been?
Well, I got COVID, but all things considered, I'm doing okay. I'm quarantined up and upstairs like Rapunzel in her tower.
You do have that. You have the hair right now.
Yeah, so far Henry and Lauren don't have it, so that's good.
That's good. Very good.
But I'm doing relatively okay given that. So.
Good. All right. So there's a couple different things in why I started the conversation about trying to put this show together. The top and first most of the list is that I lost my shit about these primaries. Like I was looking at the primaries, they were lining up, and I was trying to educate the public about their options. I'm not advocating for anybody to break any laws. I was just trying to make sure that everybody knew that in the state of Tennessee, you don't register. You just go pick up the primary you asked for. And unless somebody thinks you're a liar, you're probably going to be okay. And so I've got to think about it more. I used to be, Randy and I were talking about it before we started. I used to be very pro open primary because I'm paying for it with my taxes. I should get a voice in there. But then the more I've been thinking about it, the more I want you guys to shut them down and make it clear how much I'm excluded from this process in things moving forward. So as I kind of have been working through this idea and what's going on, it's still been a consistent question of mine that I've talked to both of you guys about on previous shows. I don't understand what a Republican or a Democrat actually is. And so, I thought about trying to get you guys some homework and giving you, a 10-point list and give me the party stance on each. And then we can say yes or no on whatever. And then we got a gift, I guess, for lack of a better word, from the Supreme Court to have a good, fun topic to talk about that's very partisan on whether or not we want to talk about this Roe v. Wade leak situation. But, again, that's an easy one. For the most part, as far as a simple policy topic, the right is against abortion. The left is pro-choice. Is that a fair assessment inside the party bounds?
There's a spectrum.
Matt, go ahead.
There's a spectrum. Okay.
Yeah.
So again,
within both parties, less so, but historically there is a spectrum. But to talk about open primaries, wasn't there, and Randy, obviously you know more about this than me, but wasn't there a resolution from the state TNGOP where they had asked the legislature to close primaries? Is that right? A couple of years back?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, the state party, state executive committee, state primary board for the state of Tennessee for the Republican Party sent a model bill to the legislator asking that we close the primaries in the state of Tennessee. It didn't make it out of committee. The issue kind of died on the vine.
I'll put my opinion
The
in
legislature takes up too much, and Matt and I talked about, or Seth and I talked about this briefly. The legislature, in my mind, takes up too much legislation every year. As many as 1,500 bills, and they don't get to all of them in a meaningful way. I think if we cut down the amount of legislation we take up, granted, a lot of it's housekeeping. It's simple. It's an up or down vote on a word change in something that's already codified. But by and large, it's too much to eat in 1 year. I think that's kind of what happened to that bill. Will the legislature take it up again? I believe they will. If not this next legislative session, perhaps the one after that. Having both parties on board with, making that adjustment.
Now, okay, so
right
help. There, Matt, does the TNDP have a stance on this topic?
To my knowledge, our governing board, which would be the state executive committee for TNDP, I don't think has had a resolution. But I know a number of Democrats who are in favor of closed primaries.
I wouldn't see why you wouldn't be. I would assume you would be. For the most part, it would be, other than the optics, I think that's the one truism of it. I think the optics are bad for everybody. And that's the real play here that the Democrats could use and be like, well, the GOP wants to shut you guys out. But really, when it gets down to the brass tacks of it, like your letter that you sent out pre-primary in response to me pitching a fit was, it's important to us that if you're a Democrat, you vote in a Democratic primary because those numbers are important to us. It helps us fundraise in the future. It helps all these other things that we're doing. It's the long game that we're working on here. And so closing the primaries is going to help that.
To frame the whole conversation, I think you really just need to discuss what is a primary and what is a primary for. Primary is a function of a political party, be it the Republican Party or the Democratic Party.
But I don't donate to your parties, but I'm still paying for it.
So, Matt, and you and I have talked about this before, early on, but way back when we first met. How does it work? Why do we do it this way? Getting everybody out there. 20% of the people in Knox County voted this cycle. There's 80% of the people that really don't care. And they're not going to engage in a meaningful way. And if they do, if we get to 50% voter participation in Knox County election, that's a huge push. Getting them to care about the primary, most people want to choose who they want to choose, which is fine. And the Republican Party's not against that. So every state writes its own election laws. We can only, in the state of Tennessee, in Knox County and the state of Tennessee, we can only control so much. When you start talking about federal offices, we have federal voting guidelines that we have to abide by. The federal government does weigh in on that. When it comes to primaries locally for Knox County, the Knox County Republican Party, that executive committee, has the authority to close the primaries in Knox County, choose their candidate, and the primary is held by the Republican Party. And then
so that's a convention, right? You pull a convention,
yes.
And the convention would select
nominating convention. Yes.
Right. Okay.
So
I agree. Do it.
And
me too,
hey,
man.
Brother, I'm on board, but not everybody's on board with that. There are a lot of people that want to be independent. They don't want to affiliate. They like people in both parties, and they feel like it takes something away from them.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt right there. Matt, if you know the answer to this, please jump in. When you say a lot of people, of the 20% that's getting involved in a primary in the first place, or let's take it back.
The ones that are actually voting now.
Of the ones that are actually voting in generals now, what percentage of those are the they that you just mentioned, as far as the want to pick who they want to pick? They might take a Democrat, they might take a Republican, which would be functionally an independent voter. They're not just voting party line. They're going to vote who they think's the right for the job, regardless, by the seat that's available for them to vote for. What percentage in Knox County do we think sits like that?
So in a general election, you don't have that problem because you're able to vote for either a Democrat or a Republican. You would have to look at the primary elections and who's voting in it. In the state of Tennessee, that's a little difficult because you declare at the poll. So you get crossover voting, and it's difficult to tell whether those people are actually independent or those people are simply voting because there isn't anybody in there.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a difficult number to get to. One of the ways you can find out is close the primary and see what happens. That's not necessarily ideal, but it's certainly something that will get people's attention.
I think if you close the primary, you'd have a lot of people in Knox County just register as a Republican because they've lived in Knox County long enough to know that if they want to actually vote for somebody, they're going to have to vote for the Republican.
Well, here's the thing. The way that our bylaws are structured, in order to vote in that primary, you have to meet the requirements of the party, which is you're a bona fide Republican.
Is the election when I go to the election commission office and update my registration, are they going to put a questionnaire in front of me?
Well, actually, it doesn't go to the election commission office. It's internally controlled by the party. You're going to come to our convention.
Is that how other states do it?
No, actually, every state writes its own laws. Okay. I've lived in 7. We've had this conversation. Some states actually have fully closed primaries. Some have partially closed primaries, or what I refer to as partially closed. You declare prior to the election day,
right, with your registration
when you register.
Okay, so that's what you're.
In North Carolina, Carolina, the Democrats have to vote in the Democratic primary. The Republicans have to vote in the Republican primary, and independents get to pick which primary they want to vote.
I'm okay with that one. That one works. That one works.
That one works for me. Hey,
but when you say the Democrats have to vote in the Democratic primary, that's because they.
When they registered to vote as a Democrat. Or did they
have to go fill out a questionnaire with the state party?
They registered as a member of the Democratic Party. But when you have registration, too, you have people that are registered one way that vote another way. I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of people in West Virginia registered as Democrats who vote for Republicans, and by all
in the primary or general,
but haven't changed their.
Well,
their
it depends on right. It depends on West Virginia law, right? Yeah, and again, to me, I just like the sheriff's race is the easy one to pick on for this one to me right here, because Matt didn't get to vote for sheriff because, well, and I guess it's not. I don't feel as bad for Matt because it's his fault for not putting a candidate up, but at the end of the day. There was
That's one thought.
Nobody stepped up for it, whether it's Matt's fault or not. But
I wouldn't say it's Matt's fault.
Nobody stepped up for it. No independent stepped up for it, and especially in the sheriff's race, because it is one of the few in these countywide races that have a decent amount of qualification requirements. When you get we were talking again, Randy and I were talking pre-show. It's there's you just got to be 21 and been in county for a little while to be a commissioner, to be the mayor. For most of these seats, you don't have to have much other than to live here and be old enough. But the sheriff's one's got some qualifications. So there's, I could have run for sheriff. No, I couldn't. And so I understand why that one's a little harder to fill that.
But given the results of that race, did crossover voting make a difference?
I mean, I didn't.
Not in that particular race.
I didn't.
Did it make a difference in other races? Depends on how many crossover votes there were. I mean, you can drill, and over the course of the next few months, we'll drill down on the numbers who actually cast votes and what the precinct makeup generally is. You got to look at historical data. So I would say that in the trustees race and the 2 at-large commission races, there was a significant amount of crossover voting, just by the numbers. Total vote count in that primary. However, that being said, we're not recording when somebody goes to the polls, you're not recording who they voted for. So right. You really don't know whether, that number was a bunch of Democrat voters or they were just independent-minded individuals.
Related to what Randy was talking about with the party function as well, too, what a lot of people may not realize is that the chairs of the party, so Daniel and I, or Randy and I, when it was Randy, we get communication from the election commission every year, and we have to officially call for a primary in races. And that's an official legal documentation that the party is calling for, and we cannot call for a primary, and that would be legally allowed under Tennessee statute. Yeah,
but and for the Republican Party, that decision isn't made by one individual. It's made by the county executive committee. Now, certainly the chairman transmits that information to the election commission. But once we close the primaries in Knox County, then we will have to conduct primaries that way going forward. And the only way we can change back to the way it used to be would be to get special permission from the state executive committee. Once you go that way, you don't go back. And you have to make a compelling argument to do so.
And you can't close one race and open another. It's all or no. At least it is within the Democratic Party. You have to. It's all closed.
Yes, all county races would have to be that way. Now, it wouldn't impact state or federal offices. So
unless the state party decided, or unless the state party, or unless the state went through the legislation process to get it to be closed all the time.
Exactly. Okay. Now, in accordance with our bylaws, and one of the changes that they recently made, our conventions are done by mass convention. We used to have 89 voting precincts in Knox County. Now we have 103. And in order to conduct a convention, you have to have a 75% majority present in voting. Well, if you don't have leadership or representatives in 75%, all 103, or in this case, 76 precincts represented, you can't even hold a convention. Well, the bylaws got changed. Now we go to a mass convention. So
whoever shows up gets to do.
There you go. Now we're in a position where we can reasonably close our primaries, expect that we will have participation from all 103 precincts. But whether we do or not, we're going to be able, as a party, to name our candidates.
Okay.
Just the Republicans.
All right.
And there is a vetting process that you have to go through.
All right. So for the sake of conversation, let's put our hypothetical caps on and say, all right, state the powers that be decide that we're going full closed primaries. Right. So
on the state level or on the county level?
On a state level. So every race in the state is any primary in the state you have to be registered to. Let's again, for the hypothetical sake, let's assume it's the as Randy described it, the fully closed primary, where I have to not only register as a Republican, I actually have to go inside the Republican Party to get, I guess, make sure I get the bona fides in check. I mean, I already know that I'm not going to pass either banner standard here, but just off the top of your heads, I'll start with Matt. Like, what would be on that list of what are the things that make a bona fide Democrat in the state of Tennessee?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So if we had fully closed primaries,
you would register. You would self-identify as a Democrat. You would register as a member of the Democratic Party. At least that's how it works in North Carolina. When I lived in North Carolina, is that you self-register, self-identify as a member of the Democratic Party, but you have to do so before the election. You don't just do it the day of.
Okay, well, let me react.
Continually a member of the Democratic Party.
Right, but I guess the either way we want to get there is, outside of me just saying that I'm a Democrat, if there was a checklist to say whether or not a person is or is not a Democrat, maybe a better way to do is, let's say I want to run as a Democrat for a certain seat, and you need to vet me to see if I'm actually a Democrat or not, because if I'm wearing your hat, I need to be on your team, right? So what are the checklist points?
Legally, we can remove you from the ballot if you have not met the primary voting requirements.
Right. So Matt,
you've not voted in a certain amount of
again, let me try to clarify what I'm trying to get at in the question here. Is that, like, I understand that there's voting record issues, and that's an easy one to go after. Have I been voting in Democratic primaries in the past? Do I have a record of voting for Democrats? But I'm talking about, like, issues-based stuff, like stuff that's going to be, I don't know, like, again, just because it's on topic right now. So I'm in favor of overturning Roe v. Wade, but I want to run as a Democrat. Is that, like, those kind of things? Like, what are those kind of things that are on that list that says you might have some Democratic values, but you don't have enough? And what's the list theoretically in either party, either way?
There is not a specific list. I mean, we have a platform, but I mean, there are very few occasions where we would remove someone from the ballot. It would have to be expressly, they have said something obscene. They have cursed the Democratic Party. They have said
like if they said something like the party chair is a party hack, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Like
Did somebody call you a hack?
Me.
At the end of the day, it's left up to the Democratic primary voters to pick who they think best represents and so that's something the Democratic electorate picks who they think is actually the more.
But if it's actually Democrats voting, and if it's actually educated Democrats that know the platform positions voting, I just I wanted to do it as a stupid Facebook survey. That's how I wanted to approach this episode. I wanted to have 10 points, and if you answer those, 5 yeses, 6 or 7 yeses and 3 no's means you're a Democrat.
You're looking for a litmus test.
Yeah, there you go. That's a better word for it. That because again, to me is on all the interview episodes I did for this primary, all those interviews, everybody I had my little 5-question thing, and one of the 5 questions was always, do you feel like partisanship helps me as the voter in making my decision? And depending on the race and depending on the person was whether it was a yes or no. And so, but there were enough yeses that it makes my point. If the R matters after your name, to me, the voter, then the R should mean something, and I don't know what the R means.
Okay.
I don't know what the D means. I don't know what, that's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of here. Is the litmus test being an easy way if we had 10 questions, and I could say 7 of those I agree with, 3 of those I don't. That puts me leaning right, leaning left, however you want to define
every candidate, every Democratic candidate and every Republican candidate is not a carbon copy of each other. I mean, my party has everyone from Joe Manchin to AOC, and Randy's party's got everybody from Mitt Romney to Marjorie Taylor Greene. So we
really have 3 things that
we're trying. Do you have a problem
trying
with the women candidates? What's going on with that, Matt? Both the girls are the crazy ones.
No, I didn't.
We're trying to talk about 3 different things.
Yes.
So first, let me go back to where Matt started a moment ago. Codifying it as a state to close primaries at the legislative level would mean both parties have to. Right now in the state of Tennessee, both parties write their own requirements, what it means to be a Republican, and what the requirements are to seek office. So for the Republicans, it's one thing. I honestly couldn't tell you exactly what it is for the Democrat Party, but for in the state of Tennessee,
we've been over this.
Democratic. So in the state of Tennessee, it's left to the parties to make that definition. In a closed primary
stop
state.
right there. No, you did it perfect. What is the definition? So, since you're my Republican in the room, what is the definition, as you just mentioned, of a Republican?
Okay, that's a separate question. I said run for public office as a Republican.
That's fine. We'll stick with that version.
All right,
of it.
so
we can come back to who am I as an individual after that, because again, my point being is if
and that's why
matters,
I said 3 different things we're talking about here.
But this is the one that I want to get to the bottom of. So you're right. The legals and the crazy of the trying to get things in place. I understand that that's its own set of things. But again, if somebody tells me that it matters that these races are partisan because that tells you something about the candidate, then that means the R means something, and that's what I want to know. What does the R mean? And then Matt can tell me what the D means.
Okay, so for the Knox County Republican Party, it starts right here at home. Let's talk about the Knox County Republican Party and what it means to be a Republican.
Good.
You are and you want to run for public office. You are a routine, regular Republican voter. You support the best and brightest conservatives for public office. What does that actually mean? Every election, you go to the polls, you pull that lever. When it's a primary, you're voting Republican. If it's a general election, we have no way to verify who it is you're voting for. Now, if you make public statements that says, I'm not supporting the Republican in a general election, that puts you at odds with the Republican Party. The second thing, or the other requirement for Knox County Republicans, is you're donating your time and or your money to the election of the best and brightest conservatives for public office. Not just at the county, but at the county, state,
level, right,
and federal level.
Okay.
So that is the benchmark. That is in its simplest form, that's what it means.
So I'm cheap and I don't donate, but I live in Knox County, so I've always pulled a Republican primary, so definitionally I could be a Republican.
If you're not donating time and money, then people are going to want to know, Are you really committed to the cause of electing conservatives to public office? And again, this is all going to be presented to your neighbors. How do your neighbors perceive you? If those people are going to elect you, you got to get on the ballot. In order to get on the ballot, you got to be a regular Republican voter. You have to donate time and treasure. And there is a national RNC platform. That thing's 173 pages long. Not many people are reading it.
I see Matt's reading it right now, and he's going to pick out the ones that are really bad in there to make sure that you're still on board with those.
All right, so now let's go to Roe v. Wade.
I'm pulling up something separate, but keep going.
Let's go to Roe v. Wade. So
what?
you're hold on, bear with me, Matt.
Right, let's go.
So the question is, if I'm in favor or not in favor of Roe v. Wade, does that preclude me from being a candidate for your party? As it stands right now, as it relates to Roe v. Wade, no decision has been made. There's a lawsuit. It's in front of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's going through a deliberative process.
Something page.
I will tell you, firsthand knowledge, there are people that I know that have donated time, treasure, always voted Republican, that are not in favor of overturning Roe v. Wade.
But as far as the actual platform's concerned, is it in the platform anywhere? Is that a platform? Is that...
The Republican Party believes in the sanctity of life. Roe v. Wade was a decision made by the Supreme Court years ago, and it took away the right for states to make a decision for their state. I believe it's a decision that should be made at the state level. Do I believe it should be one way or another? That's why we have elected offices. I personally can feel one way, but that doesn't preclude me from being a member of the Republican Party.
Because I can agree with you on the legal standard. Like, I don't know, like, if this is going to be a federal thing, then Congress needs to pass a law. The president needs to sign it off and then put it over with. Like, I don't like the idea that there's weird stuff that the Supreme Court pushes around and stuff like that. But that's when it comes down to the conversation of it, that's not really what most people are talking about when they're having the conversation. But
most people are unclear about what it is they're actually, setting their hair on fire about it as it comes to Roe v. Wade. So we can, like I said, we can have discussions and say, this is what I believe. I believe in the sanctity of life. I believe abortion, should never happen. Well, I believe abortion should happen in the case of incest, rape, whatever. Life, saving a mother's life. We can have all those discussions, but those discussions should not be happening nationwide. Those discussions should be happening and governed by the states, the government closest to us. And the government's role in that, is finite. And it's outlined in the Constitution. We're a representative republic.
Right.
What do the people that are directly impacted?
Right, which again, like I said, I think on the technicality side of it, if this is going to be a federal level thing, it needs to be in federal law and not be a decision of the federal courts. I agree with that part of it. And again, I think that's a valid point, is that there's two things happening at the same time. There's your feelings about a specific issue, and then there's how we should go about dealing with said
Should we close our primaries, and what should it look like? Every single state I've lived in have had a variation in their primaries. When you register, how you register, whether you only have 2 parties or you have 10 parties. How many signatures do I have to obtain in order to appear on the public ballot? Whether I even have to appear on a public ballot, whether I can get nominated by my party and move right to the general election.
Okay, so to be a Republican, I have to give my money and always vote Republican, and then I'm good enough to get the R after I'm named to run for office.
Generally, yes.
I mean, not me, because I run my mouth on here.
Because we're all entitled to hold an opinion about anything. That's the great part about living in this country. You can choose which primary.
My wife tested negative for COVID. She just texted me.
Yay. All right, so... But again, that rolls back into my issue, is then what does it mean when the R is after your name to the voter? It means that you voted Republican and that you've donated to Republicans, because that's the minimum standard.
You want to elect the best and brightest conservative public office. What does that mean? So that goes back to that 173-page platform. Limited government. What does limited government mean? That means something different to all 370 million people in this country. It's incumbent upon each of us. We self-govern. That 20% that's voting is making a decision for the other 80. We're failing when we don't exercise our right to vote. Whether it's a primary or a general election, we're failing if we're not exercising our right to vote. We are no longer self-governing. We're abdicating our responsibility to somebody else.
Right. All right. So let me do. Matt, can you give me the Democratic version of what it needs, what I need to be to run as a Democrat in Knox County?
I pulled up the legal document, and this is from the TNDP approved bylaws, April 30th, 2001. A bona fide Democrat is defined as an individual whose record of public service, actions, accomplishment, public writings, and or public statements affirmatively demonstrates that they are faithful to the interest, welfare, and success of the Democratic Party in the United States and of the state of Tennessee. The state party or county party may okay, yep. And so it's purposefully broad because, again, we have a platform. And does every single Democrat agree with every single part of that platform? No, because when we have a convention, we have people that come together and vote on parts of that platform, and people disagree on parts of that platform. And so it's purposefully broad because it's supposed to be in the spirit of the platform. Like no one is always going to agree with 100% of any political party. But when you choose to affiliate with a political party, the goal or the bona fide nature of being a part of that political party is that you agree with the spirit of the document of the party platform. And so that goes back to there's a spectrum, and there's always been a spectrum within either party. And political parties of the same political party in different states could be a little bit different as well too. And so it's purposefully broad. And so that's why I think that your idea that there has to be like 10 check marks and you agree with every single thing, I think is just thinking about it not in the paradigm that it's meant to be thought of, because you do have people that are the spirit of that document. Because, I mean, like I said, there's people like Joe Manchin. There's people like, so it's just, it's a spectrum of in the spirit of what that party platform is. And over time, the electorate of each party kind of pushes where that platform goes and pushes where the candidates are as well, too. What's going on with the screen?
The platform or special interest.
I lost me. My camera gave out. I don't know what's going on with that.
Okay, you're still there?
I'm still here. I just don't have a camera anymore for some reason.
There's Randy 2 times.
Yeah. So...
So there's not a checklist. There's the platform, and that's 100 and whatever pages, and it's someone who consistently is seeking the interest of that platform. And I mean, we can get into the specifics of everything that's in that platform, but generally, I think people can kind of understand the differences between the platforms.
Well, and to Matt's point,
apparently not to answer your question, because I don't understand the difference in either one of your parties, but that's the punchline.
You don't think that Randy and I have different political beliefs?
Sure, but I don't. I mean,
we're almost in agreement, brother.
I don't know what it means. Like I get it. Again, the question being, I don't know what it means to me as the voter when you have. I don't know, top of my head, you had that District 7 race for commission. You had Rhonda Lee Merritt and who else? Severance.
And there was a third. So what is it you don't understand? The difference between the three of them?
Okay.
We'll be here, Matt. So the difference between the three of them, or how do you choose?
Well, I mean, they are obviously not the same. They obviously don't have the same list of values and those sorts of things as individuals. Yet, all three of them are Republicans.
Yes.
So, but they're not. I don't know. Again, if you go to a baseball game, they're all wearing the same jersey. You know who's on what team by the actions that they make, and their goal is to win the game in the baseball game. And again, I get it on that stance of it. Again, I apologize to anybody watching on YouTube right now. I don't know what happened. My camera gave out, so you just get to see Randy's beautiful face.
Sorry about that, folks.
But and as you described it, and as Matt was describing it too, brass tacks of it, it sounds like the same thing as a baseball game. Is that this is a team of people trying to win the game. I don't know that I don't know if that's how I want to be comfortable with this system at work. Is that it's a group of people trying to win the game for their team. Because that's how it feels like. It's,
okay. Because you think of it as a game.
No, but look at. I don't know if you heard it because I don't know if you had your audio on or not. But it's like, you look at a sports game like a baseball game. They're all wearing the same jersey. They have a whole different skill set. You have different guys. You have pitchers. You have catchers. You have first base, second base. They're completely different people. They're different types of players. They have different strategy. No, not strategies as much as they do have different specific talents that makes them good at being part of the team. And the point is to get the team to win. And so they're not the same. It's not a team of identical players. It's a team of players reaching the same goal, which is both of your definitions for partiness is that for the most part, it's you have a history of helping this team win through donation and voting record. And you wish to continue to help this team win in the future and be a part of the team in the growth process. That is the definition that I'm hearing in a baseball metaphor right now.
Okay, so let me put it to you this way. I get your analogy. I really do.
I threw that together just now.
Okay, so I have served in a legislative position. Okay, I have made local law. I've done things that were in the interest of everyone, not just a certain segment of society. There's a big misconception about what it means to be a member of the Republican Party, and then what it means if you're an elected official. You might have gotten the support of the Republican Party, but you got it because, generally speaking, you were a conservative. You believed in limited government. You were going to spend my tax money wisely. Your expectations about what government's role was a little bit less than people perhaps on the other side of the aisle. I'll let the Democrats speak for the Democrats. At the same time, that individual is expected to serve everyone's interests. So they're going to have to, and there's nobody's king, so they have to work with other people that are not always in step. Both parties want to elect individuals that they believe are going to serve the interest of their constituency. But like I said, elected officials serve the public trust, not the party interest. That truly is the crux of it. And too many people get wrapped around the axle when it comes to politics about, I believe there are people on the other side of the aisle that want the same things I do. Those are easy things to deal with. But at the same time, there are people, my neighbors, people in my own neighborhood want things that I don't believe is a function of government. And I'm going to work feverishly to make sure that government stays with it and stays in its lane. I don't believe the government should rob Peter to pay Paul. I don't think we should fund things that aren't in the public's interest, and not everything government does is in the public's interest. So that's what it means for me to be a member of the Republican Party and do the things that I do as a party member. I'm an elected Republican official. I'm not an elected official. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. So when people,
Seth, what would be the alternative to political parties? Every country and government around the world has political parties, including ones that have one-party rule. So I feel like it's not. I mean, if you try and get rid of the parties, you could get rid of the Democratic Party, you could get rid of the Republican Party. There would be other groups that would take...
Well, I mean, like city elections are a perfect example of it. They're not allowed to put the names on it, but it's still pretty obvious that it's there. I mean...
That was a feel-good move by the state legislature.
So what's the alternative?
But at least, well, for the city's sake of it, at least in a primary process that way, there is no question of like, am I legally allowed to vote in this primary? There's no question. I'm not, because I'm not a city resident. But as a if I were a city resident, there's no question about, am I allowed to pick up this ballot for a city primary? Everybody that's in there, like I that is at least a more democratic option to me. I like ranked choice voting. I think that's a better way to do it personally. And the parties, you can still have the party affiliation on there because it is, in your opinions at least, it is some sort of indicator to some of the policy issues and stuff like that to the individual. But at least I can vote for whoever I want and not have any questions about it, not have to worry about a closed primary that I don't have a choice on, not have to worry about a sheriff's race like this, but happen to be a Democrat in Knox County and not getting the chance to vote for sheriff because I want to vote for my mayor candidate. And at least in a different primary version, I at least still have access to all the races.
Well, I think that you could make good faith arguments for variations on the system that we have. Maybe all municipal governments should be nonpartisan. Maybe we should have different ways of doing primaries.
No, Randy, he's not saying this is how it should be. He's throwing options on the table.
Or maybe, you can have a good faith argument that there should be more political parties, I suppose. And I'm not saying I agree or disagree with any of those things. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, you can't just get rid of political parties.
So if like I said, it comes down to the public's participation. We make it easy for people to get on the ballot, run for office, and then do dumb stuff. You know, most politicians that I interact with, if you ask them, what do you know now that you didn't know before you got elected? That conversation's wide and broad. They learn so much afterwards. Well, who's teaching them? And why did you seek the office if you didn't know what you were doing before you ran?
Because I was in PTA. What do you want from me?
So I will take it all the way back to when you're 4 years old and you're sharing with another child that's not a sibling. So you're not fighting with them. You're just learning to share. Government's the same way. We don't have political discussions because, we got to avoid that at the dinner table or with people that might, not agree with. That's nonsense. Our entire nation is based on the concept or idea that we self-govern. We look amongst ourselves and decide who's the best person for the job. We make it too easy for people to make the case they're the best person for the job, but look where we're at.
Well, again,
not just nationwide, statewide, and locally.
Sure.
We're broken as a government.
I put forth energy and effort, and I still can't finish my job description sheet. Because again, I think that's important, and I think
we should tell the legislature we want a job description for public office.
But they're the best.
There's a thought, Matt. Can you get behind that? Shouldn't there be a better understanding?
Aren't there statutes with short descriptions already? But you're talking about a list of what they're supposed to do.
Just a job description.
What they're responsible for, what they're not responsible for.
Right? Because again, it all started in 2020 or whatever, and we had some school board stuff going on, and it's we didn't have much school board that year. We had 1 or 2 races, but one of my big frustrations, as I learned, is a county commissioner getting up in front of people talking about how important schools are. And it's I agree schools are important, and I hope that you would think schools are important, but that's not your job. And we as the public don't know that, and that's a problem.
Right, yes, that's the problem. I don't think the problem lies necessarily with our political system as much as it lies with those participating.
Well, I think that's part of it, level. Though. I think the AB that's at play most of the time is wholly disengaging for the public, or it's the easy, lazy. I really don't like this one thing, and Roe v. Wade's a simple one. Single issue voters, super out there, whatever. It's it doesn't matter anything else. They could be a serial killer as long as they're going to stop abortions. I'm voting for them.
Some people call that a dog whistle.
Who are we to police what people care about and what's most important to them? Every voter, it's different for every voter. Every voter doesn't approach it with a list of do they agree with this or do they agree with that. Every voter also doesn't vote every single way all the time. There's a number of variables that will fall in our favor, fall in their favor. And another thing about political parties is I think that you think through the paradigm that somehow political parties have this stronghold on every member and every elected official. And I can tell you that political parties are very amorphous. They are malleable. You may think that the chairs of the political party have vast control. I can tell you right now, you have vast control.
In 2022, right, just this year, just this half a session that we had this year, how many times do you think you have spoken the phrase supermajority state of Tennessee?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what do you mean spoken it?
Spoken it. Just talking to people about stuff going on at the state level, and the supermajority does this, and the supermajority does that. If that's not the other team is going to do what they want because they have way more than anything, I don't know what else it is. And maybe you're a bad example. Gloria Johnson, I hear the phrase out of her mouth almost every time she talks, and it's not a complaint on her. I like Gloria, but
what does that have to do with political parties being? I mean, look at the caucuses too. I mean, I could guarantee you that in the GOP state house caucus there are different factions and different groups. I mean, that's the case in places where there's a supermajority of Democratic legislatures as well too. I mean, there are groups within political parties just as much as there are.
I mean, I acknowledge that exists. Yes, I 100% agree with that. But when we have the easier one being on the federal level, we have the federal level the way it sits right now, and other than Manchin and Sinema, everything is exactly on at least major items, especially Biden campaign items that he's trying to get through. Almost every single one of them is exactly the color makeup of whatever. Because
all of the, I mean, I can understand that. I would say all of the big flashy items people are usually in agreement on, at least publicly. But there is so much legislation that is not the big flashy items, both in the state and in federal.
Which I think Randy would agree there's too much of that, but whatever.
And there is too much of that.
Right. But
there's a lot more. It's an amorphous, malleable. Think about it more like a movement.
Even on the big,
more of a movement than it is a party.
And on the big flashy ones, the only reason why it's so strictly party line is because it's politics, not governance. It's if I have to put this one on because everybody's paying attention and I have to stay within the party rules, and as long as I stay within the party rules, I can run again and keep my seat and keep this fat paycheck coming and the other cool stuff that comes along with the job.
Well, not all the paychecks are fat. Just to be clear,
right on the state one, because that's a fun conversation I've had with a couple people, like whether or not we need to go to full time.
If you're full-time state legislature, that's a poor job to have.
Right. Well, on the federal level, at least it's not. But I don't know. Again, like I think it's I acknowledge my bias towards that premise, Matt. I 100% do. Mm-hmm. But I'm hard pressed to think that bias isn't semi-standard among the public.
All right,
but
so
I don't understand, because you're saying you don't understand what it means to be a Republican or a Democrat, but then you're saying that every Democrat and Republican thinks the same thing on all these issues.
So here's one of the reasons political parties
I'm not in my
exist.
head, Matt. I forgot you can't see me.
That the reason political parties exist, probably above anything else. How many different professions are there out there? There's
innumerable.
Right. So if a segment of society, a specific segment of society, is benefited by government regulation or legislation, they're going to do stuff that serves their bias, their interests. Political parties were designed to serve everyone's interest, not necessarily just partisan interests. It's a pushback so that all the lawyers don't get everything they want. All the real estate developers don't get everything they want. All the restaurateurs don't get everything they want. All the insurance agents don't get everything they want. Because money influences this a great deal. It shouldn't, but it does. I think good government should influence it much more than, ideology or special interest. The parties are there, and they truly are the firewall to, powerful people running roughshod over the public.
To answer your
other, I think the key,
I'll throw the media in that as well.
When you think about the history of political parties as well too, is that it's been this give and take throughout American history, and there's different constituencies. Parties represent different constituencies, and those constituencies have sometimes changed over time. I mean, you could just look at the history of the Democratic Party or the history
lots
of the
of examples
Party.
of that.
I mean, like the Democrats used to be the populist party, and it's not. It's kind of shifted.
And so that's one way that our government and us as a society have dealt with competing constituencies, is that you have a political system where these constituencies who are voters, and you have to represent those constituencies. And if you don't represent a constituency very well, then they'll go somewhere else. And that's a way to have these competing interests through a situation where we don't just rile up and go after each other.
As opposed to right now, that's not what anyway. Bad joke. But to answer your earlier question, I do agree. Or to how do I word this? I do know that the parties at large are consistent in the one thing of being whatever the other one wants is wrong. That I'll say that is a poor verbalization of what I'm trying to get at. As far as I do understand what the parties are.
You say tomato, I say tomato.
Right. On the broad level, it's whatever they said is bad and whatever we say is right. Or whatever they said, we say the opposite. Like that's, and again, there part of this is me, and this is the accidental genius of my attempt at a show here, is that I know I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I don't think I'm special in that. I think I'm average. I think there's a lot of people out there that have the same thing, and we've been at it for 50 minutes now, and I'm no closer to really understanding what a Republican or a Democrat is.
But you know what a Republican and a Democrat is.
I know that Randy's sitting in my house and you're on the screen and I'm talking to you, but no, I really don't. That's just it, is I don't, because and maybe this is the malleability and this is the attempt at compromise or whatever flashy word we want to use on it, is I can find plenty of examples, if I think about it hard enough, of Republicans doing things that I thought were Democrat things and then Democrats doing things that I thought were Republican things, and I don't get it. Again, like, to me, other than if I'm on this team and that team said it's a good idea, then I say it's a bad idea. That's the only consistent part that I know of in this system. So
I will agree with you to a point, and it that's probably one of the things that has caused me to stick with it as long as I have, because I push back against that sort of thing every day. But I'll go back to what you said a minute ago. You're looking for the quick, easy answer. You have a family. You're running a business. 2 businesses. That was 2 businesses, not 2 families, right? So you're doing your level-headed best, and now somebody expects you to come help run your government. Well, the answer to that question is yes. Do I want you to go to Washington? No. I think by the time somebody goes to Washington, they should have a better understanding of what's going on and how it works. Stay in your lane. We've had legislators outside of federal government advocating for and running sometimes on the idea that we need term limits. We have term limits. They're called elections.
I agree with that. That's one of those.
We're not exercising the public is not exercising its power and influence over the government that they get. Don't expect, inspect. It is incumbent upon us.
It took 53 minutes to get a Randyism out.
53
minutes.
But I feel your pain, brother.
I'm very disappointed right now.
When you turn 60, you're going to be deep in politics. That's why the largest voting bloc is over the age of 60.
Because you got nothing else to do.
Because you got time now. And you put up with it all your life.
There are certain people or certain different constituencies who pay more attention given different aspects of their life. If someone is part of this community or that community, or they do this or they do that, if they're older, their age, where they live. There's lots of different variables that are at play for why someone is more engaged or less engaged than they are. And that also, I think, goes back to political parties being the means by which we mitigate constituencies, because the Republican Party has their constituencies. We have our constituencies. They try and get their people out to vote. We try and get our people out to vote. We have some constituencies that always vote. They have some constituencies that always vote. And it's just a way to mitigate all of that. And in my opinion, that to me, I understand that we do not have a perfect government, but I think that our government is very representative, and I think it's the best way that we can structure our society at this point. And I think it's the best way that any government is structured around the world.
I mean, again, I don't. In the grand theory of it, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I just think that this. I don't know. I just think the AB, and again, it may be a perception issue more than it is a reality. But the perception of the AB that we live in right now, I think, is the most disengaging thing to most voters, or the most fully engaging. I'm angry, and that's the only reason I'm voting, not because I'm paying attention to anything, but this one issue that's really pissing me off.
That's why most people vote anyway. So here's what you can do to help fix it: donate time and treasure to the Republican Party, and I'll help get you plugged in and do what I do to try and change that perception in that model. Both parties, we as a society can do better.
I'm going to run for clerk in 26 because I think that's a do-nothing job.
County clerk? Mm-hmm. Court clerk?
County clerk.
Okay.
That's a hard job. That's a big staff you got to manage.
Yeah, but that's not. I can manage people. That's not a problem. It's I don't know. That's one of my, again, goes to the job description thing. Like, I had Sherry Wood on, and she was a fun show, but I've had performance reviews that I've done with employees before, where you kind of talk about, what do you do every day, how's work and stuff, and like they give you the very fluff. I'm busy. I'm doing a lot of stuff. I take care of a lot of business, and it's like, no, you don't.
I'm a sailor. I've managed thousands and thousands of people. I know what they're doing.
You're just sitting around the office making some phone calls. Now, I'll give her this, that she's on the state board and she handles a lot more of the stuff that she doesn't have to. She goes just above and beyond what the minimum requirements of the job are. And I'm not trying to dog her about it at all. I just think, like, there's a couple positions that I think are weird positions like that.
Not every state elects their clerks.
I think the judges, I don't know why we elect the judges. It's so weird.
Well, and again, that varies state to state.
Yeah. And I was going to go back. What were we just talking about? I've got this foggy brain.
I'm sorry you don't feel well, Matt. Really. I'm serious.
I appreciate that, Randy. Political parties. Oh, I think that politics is part of human nature, and part of human nature is a short attention span. And there are politicians.
That was perfect, Matt. You did that on purpose. Like, it wasn't foggy brain. You were making fun of the short attention span thing. I get it. It's perfect.
I really did.
Well played.
That was nice.
And I think that probably one of the aspects that I think makes politics so toxic is us trying to put everything into tiny little sound bites to get people riled up, because that's what. And again, it goes back to constituencies. But when you're trying to win an election, you're trying to turn people out. And what does it take to turn people out? You have to appeal to emotion. You have to appeal to what they care about. You have to appeal to the issues that they're concerned with, and so
right, regardless of whether you can do that in the job or not. But
that's true everywhere for all of time in every aspect of government that has ever existed, whether it's a monarchy or a constitutional republic or whatever it is.
I agree with that. I think that I am more than happy to blame voters or the public at large all over the place for the situation we're in. Because I think that's the reality of it. It's like, like I've dogged on you directly, Matt, and indirectly about, I like the redistricting conversation and stuff like that. It's like, well, yeah, I understand how that's handicapping. That can handicap at some point, whether we're going to call it gerrymandering or not is unimportant. But at the end of the day, whatever it is about a particular candidate is not winning that district. Whatever the reasoning is, and whether it's just we're all lazy and we just vote for the R's because we've always voted for the R's, or whether there's something particular that actually makes this one better than the other, and it just happens to be the R more often than not. That is the issue at play to me, is that I don't think there's enough nuance in the conversation, and I think that is absolutely on the voter and or public at large who doesn't pay attention. They don't get a lot of help from the media in general. They don't get a lot of help from whatever else is going on in their lives. They're busy with other kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's our job as the voter to go out and put forth the effort. And I and selfishly, 100% selfishly, I need more people like that, because that brings me audience. That brings me shows, and I can get me monetized.
Right, they're going to come to you then because you have some information. Believe me, the number of phone calls that I've taken since engaging, full time in politics, I can't even begin to count because I had information that people wanted. A lot of it's simple information; it's readily available, but they don't know where to look for it. When I was in 7th grade, I had to take a civics test. In order to move from the 7th to the 8th grade, I had to take a civics test, and it wasn't a simple thing. It truly wasn't. It went beyond how many branches of government are there.
Right.
So I think there are many ways we can address it, and probably one of the most significant things we can do as a party is to offer that information. But again, as a county organization, we struggle. We spend, a lot of time and treasure helping run elections, get people elected. We need more resources, and some of the resources we already have available. We run public schools, and, depending on which side of the aisle you are on or what you believe as an individual, a lot of times public schools, in my opinion, fail us in the civic arena simply because we're not teaching, we're not doing a better job of teaching, getting the public to understand how truly important their engagement is. You can point to debt, you can point to poverty. There are so many things we as a free country are truly failing at simply because we're doing a poor job getting the public to understand how important their role is.
Right.
When people came over here on the Mayflower, everybody knew if you're not in the field planting, you ain't eating. And if you don't eat, you die. Well, I'm not advocating we go back that way. We've come so far. Let's keep moving forward. But as we move forward, let's not forget in a free society, there are certain norms, and we're not meeting the bare minimum.
Right. Engagement-wise, I agree 100%. All right, so, Matt, I'll let you start this.
Well, hold on. I want to say one more thing about that.
Go ahead.
And also, I may need to cut off here in a little bit.
That's what I'm trying to wrap it up because I know you're probably exhausted.
You were talking about, we were talking about elections and constituencies. And when I think about elections and constituencies, if you're not winning elections in a district or in an area, you have two options. One is you change to fit the electorate so that more of that electorate will vote for you. And then maybe you can win elections. Or two, you change the electorate by trying to turn out more people who don't vote that are part of your party. So like in the city, in like county or city elections, for city elections, it tends to be Democratic, and that's because the electorate's like that. If you want to change that, you have to turn out more Republicans, or Republicans have to change to fit the electorate. And the same thing, flip side, with county voters, or a blue county or a red county. But again,
red state, blue state.
I think that goes back to political parties being the means by which we mitigate different constituencies. And so you have to change to fit the electorate, or you have to change the electorate by changing who comes out to vote.
All right, so I'll close. We'll close it on here, and you each have a couple minutes to do it. All right. So, talk me into voting for your mayor. Matt, Matt, you want to go first, Horace?
Sure. Debbie Helsley was born in Knox County. She's lived here for 60 years. She grew up the daughter of someone who didn't graduate from high school, who went to work in a mill at age 16 that was poor, but through just sheer determination, fought her way up through the ranks and made a life for her family. And Debbie was the recipient of that dedication to hard work and commitment to her community. She is someone who was the founding Neighborhood Association president for South Woodlawn. She served on the United Way board. She was a longtime president of the Local Communication Workers of America. She served on a number of different nonprofits, Leadership Knoxville. She's someone who has shown up for the community, has lived here, and is dedicated to making sure that she listens to everyone that she encounters, and makes sure that she knows what it's like to be a hardworking person that has to scrape by and has to make her way in this world. And so she is someone who will make sure that everybody gets a fair shake, a fair deal, and a good, effective, efficient government that will work for them.
All right, Randy, sell me on Jacobs.
So I'm not here to carry Mayor Jacobs' water. He's been in the position for one term, or going on one term. I had conversations with him personally before he ran for mayor. He explained to me exactly why he was running for mayor. And quite frankly, I think he epitomized what it meant to be a solid conservative. He's an intelligent individual. He navigated a lot of political nonsense to get where he's at. He didn't do that because he wasn't willing to listen or because he was partisan one way or another. He brought people together, had discussions about what he thought was the best direction for Knox County. As the chief executive for the county, that's his job. I think he's done a great job. I don't always agree with him. When he had an issue he thought I could help with, he got on the phone and he called me. And I was honest with him. If I could help, I told him, Mayor, I'm in. I can help. If I couldn't help, I said, Mayor, there's nothing. I don't have a hand in it. I don't think I can have any impact either way. And it's been a great relationship. I have observed him do that same thing on more than one occasion. I think he's demonstrated that he can operate as the chief executive for Knox County. Probably one of the biggest things for me, and it always comes down to this for me, because I think government has a finite role. The tax rate for Knox County, in his budget this year remains flat. If you live in the city of Knoxville, controlled by the Democratic Party, your taxes aren't remaining flat; they're going up. And the people that can afford lease to pay, are impacted the greatest. We're in the middle of an inflation spike that is impacting everybody, not just one segment of society or the other. And raising taxes at this point, in my mind, is not the best thing to do. And I don't think that Mayor Jacobs is committing to taking more from the public as much as he is finding better ways to operate a more efficient and effective government. So I'm not here to carry his water. I'm telling you from personal experience, from the party's experience. He was on the ballot. Nobody challenged him because I think the majority of people in Knox County that cast a ballot on Tuesday believed he was the best person for the job, and nobody else really disputed that, so he ran unopposed.
All right, so I don't know. I was hoping that would give me some sort of better understanding of what a Democrat and Republican was, but it failed. It's another failed attempt for me to understand what the fuck's going on. So, all right,
hey,
Matt.
Randy, I don't think I've seen you since I had my first kid, but here he is, Henry.
Life changes so much, doesn't it?
Yeah. All I want to do is sit around and stare at him now.
So my youngest,
I can't right now.
My youngest is in his last semester of college. My oldest is 2 years away from 40.
Wow.
I can't imagine what it's like to be in, and I have 0 grandchildren. I can't imagine what it's like to be in your position, Matt, but yeah. I think I love babies more than I love,
All right, I'm clipping that. I'm going to clip that out of context and make it really weird.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. That and petting your dog.
Yeah, he usually hates Republicans. I don't know why.
Oh, jeez.
And my eldest just turned 12, and so I'm right in the middle of both of you guys in the kid life journey.
Didn't they just have a big birthday party or something?
It's tomorrow night. That's why we're doing this on Friday instead of Saturday. But I don't know. I appreciate you guys again. Like I love having you both on. I'm really glad that you could do it, Randy. I would have much preferred Daniel just for the sake of equity and chairness or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But at the end of the day,
more a product of a full-time job and
Right.
a law firm that
old
is
and retired versus young and busy, so whatever. But
Right.
we're lucky we got Matt sick, and that's why he's available for us. But Matt, get healthy, get better, and we'll touch base. We got plenty of more campaigning and stuff to go over as we
I'm gonna go sleep
as
now,
we roll into August and November this year. So Matt, have a great one. Thanks for coming, Randy.
Bye. Good
It's good to see you. I'm going to do an outro. Thanks, everybody. All right, so that was nothing. I don't even know. I'm
your head spinning.
I'm as lost as I ever am when I do these kind of things. So anyway, we're almost in agreement at gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to the website almostagreement.com. It's got all the who's this and whatnot, including my voter guide 22, which I need to go in and I need to pull everybody that lost the primary out of it. But it's got a reference what district they're in. It also has KGIS and Knox County Election Commission. So if you don't know where to vote, or if you're registered to vote, I might be too late. Can you still register for August?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can still register to vote in August. You just can't. Whatever. Anyway, KGIS, Knox County Election Commission. You can check all your registration and stuff like that. Figure out where your polling place is if you don't already know. Those kind of things. But it's not a primary. Well, we have another set of primaries too, so I can go break the law again. So anyway, we're almost agreement, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. I am going to do another show tomorrow night with Sam, so we'll have a busy double show weekend for you guys. So thanks for hanging out. Have a good night, everybody.
I ain't heard that one. So let me ask you something.